Welcome to another Your Questions edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast, the podcast from the world's leading online DJ school. So I'm Phil Morse, and today you're going to hear me with our students talking through all their questions over the last month. We've got some interesting stuff, including a student who doesn't want to promote themselves because they think they're too English and humble. A student who wonders why there's been no DJ gear released for so long and is looking into all the reasons that this might have happened. And another student who's returning to DJing after 40 years and is scared that so much would have changed that he won't be able to do it, along with many other questions covering the whole range of topics that we cover at Digital DJ Tips, whether that's DJ gear or music or mixing techniques or how to perform or how to promote yourself. So join us for this show, and if you like it, as ever, please do give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. This question is from John Nicholas. John says, what is behind the stagnation in releasing DJ hardware in 2024? My view is that it relates to the alpha theta effort to acquire Serato. It seems to me that the entire industry is waiting to see what is going to happen before they invest in developing new hardware. What's happening about DJ hardware and why is no DJ hardware being released is John's question. So let's put to bed the idea that one DJ company wanting to take over another DJ company is causing this. The lead time for hardware is years, right? So anything that happens in these few weeks or months doesn't have any say at all in whether new hardware is coming out or not. And I can let you into a secret as a DJ industry insider that there's always new hardware being developed. There's always new things coming down. People always tell me that this is coming in Q1 2025, or this is coming at the end of wherever, that you can't expect anything in this area until at least this time, and so on. So these plans are long, these are big plans, and they're always being made. So I think what you spotted really here, John, is the maturing of the DJ equipment market, or at least a certain part of it. Because the Pioneer DJ gear, which is the gear you find in pro DJ booths the world over, moves in such a slow way for a reason. And that is because the DJs don't like change. Because to a professional DJ, someone who turns up to play anywhere in the world, what they want in front of them is the same thing that they find in front of them at the last gig and the gig before, and that they'll find in front of them at the next gig and the next gig. They want no change. Because to them, the DJ equipment is a simple tool to do the job. And the job is playing the music that they are known for, or the music that they've prepared for that gig, etc., etc. It's not a particularly difficult job that equipment has to do for them. So that part of the DJ market has always moved very slowly. What's different is the hobby end of the market. And of course, in the hobby end of any market, so you could look at cameras, for instance, as a good comparison. Whereas a professional might select a certain camera and model and stick with that for half of their career, in the amateur photography world, people are always tinkering with different formats and different lenses and different sizes of camera, and having one camera for this and one for that and so on. And so it's quite similar in DJ equipment. With DJ equipment, part of the fun is the gear, right? Part of the fun is what you're going to be using this time next year. What can you take on holiday with you to do a bit of DJing that maybe you wouldn't otherwise be able to do? What cool apps are there on their phone on your phone to help you? And all this kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that by and large, pro DJs don't get involved in quite so much. And so what you find is that as technology moves and as new things appear, and of course the current one is real-time stems, the ability to instantly dial in an a cappella of a track as you're playing it, or the instrumental or whatever. As soon as these new things arrive, there's a rush to get the equipment out to make the most of them. And that's what tends to happen. And it's matured recently, because if you go back, say, 10 or 15 years when DJ software was quite new, there was a rush of DJ controllers, lots of companies having a go. And it's all bubbled down to just a few companies releasing just a few new things in that area, because there isn't really an awful lot new to shout about. And as I said, real-time stems is all a software thing, really. It's not really anything to do with the hardware. It's quite easy to adapt existing controls in hardware to control something like that. I personally think that the next big leap is going to be AI. I think we're going to see AI being incorporated into DJ gear, and who knows what kind of DJ gear will control that. Maybe again, there'll be not much difference. Maybe there'll be no changes in what the gear looks like, and the way that AI gets folded in will be something different. I've no idea. But ultimately, if there's nothing new to add, then there's no real rush to get new equipment out there. It was impacted for sure by the supply chain issues that happened around 2021 when the COVID lockdowns were happening and so on. For sure, that did have a knock-on effect. And you know, because these things do have long, like years of planning, it could just be that we're feeling the tail end of that now, that there was no planning done then, and so that we're not seeing the gear coming out now. I always think it's worth thinking of DJ gear not like, you know, new phones coming out every year, but more like musical instruments. You know, you don't get a new saxophone every year and every saxophone player hangs on for the new one and the old one's automatically obsolete. Now, I'm being a little bit facetious, but you do know what I mean, don't you? It's a tool to do a job, as I was saying. Think of it then maybe like a car. So cars do get new tech, and of course the big thing in cars is to switch from fossil fuels to electric, but cars do get new tech. But ultimately, you know, you buy a car and you keep it for 5, 6, 7 years, right? And I think DJ gear is more like that. So that's probably a way of looking at it. It's a very interesting question though, John. Our school and our website was kind of built on the fact that there was all this new stuff to talk about all the time, and it's really calmed down now, which I don't think is a bad thing, but it is something that is partly to do with the maturing market in my view. So the next question we had asked by our fantastic students ahead of time for this podcast is this one from Chase. And Chase is talking about a rather unusual kind of DJ gig that he has been asked to do. So I'll read you what Chase said. Chase said, I'm going to play a show at a food truck park where people will mostly just be eating, drinking and chatting. It's appealing to me already, Chase. Anyway, Chase goes on, I typically do a lot of quick mixing, but in this case, I think it maybe makes more sense to let the songs play out longer. Also, the set will have a lot of genre switches between hip hop, pop, and country. I'm in Texas, so it's required, says Chase. In other words, giant BPM swings. So Chase's question is, should I play songs all the way through, even though simply fading them out or echoing them out gets really boring? Or should I be creative and keep myself interested? In other words, give the crowd what they want, which is just some background music, or try and find a way of being interested yourself. Look, the very fact that you're thinking about this, Chase, makes you a good DJ. Some people don't think at all what the crowd might want. So look, congratulations for that. I think you've already hit on part of the formula for playing this kind of gig. And in our courses and in our best-selling Amazon book, Rock the Dance Floor, we talk about this kind of gig under the umbrella of bar, lounge, pub type of gigs. And we define them as places where people drift in and drift out. They're not there primarily for the music. The music's louder than background music, but not so loud that they can't hear themselves talk. And you're not the main attraction, right? That's the point here. And these kind of gigs can be great because you get to play tracks that you couldn't play if you're charged with filling a dance floor, right? So I think variety is the first thing. You should have the widest variety of music possible. Play those things that you would be scared to play elsewhere. That alone could keep you interested here, right? I think you can go back in time more, so you can play a wider range of years of music, of ages of music. But when it comes to the technical stuff, you're quite right to identify that quick mixing, not only because people they don't need it, they're not dancing, but also you're probably playing for a lot longer, right? So quick mixing makes sense of it. you're playing a 45-minute set or something. But if you're playing for 4 hours or 5 hours, it can get boring. Not to say tiring for you and tiring for the audience. So I think you're right to kind of call out that quick mixing probably isn't the way forward here. So what I would say that you should think about is a couple of things. The first thing is the most obvious thing, which is just the counting and timing. So you can respect the song structures and the phrases and the number of bars and beats that you let play before you mix into a new song. In other words, sections of songs are comprised of chunks of 4, 8 or 16 bars. And so at the end of a 4, 8 or 16 bar section, at a point in the song that makes sense, is the place where you would mix into the next song at the beginning of a equivalent section, right? So don't think that just fading songs out and starting new songs has to be the way to DJ. You can certainly keep the flow that way. But I think more important, and this is a technical thing, if you're a technical DJ thinking, I don't like this kind of gig because I can't do any tricks, I think there's 3 things here that you should look at. You should look at the musical key of your tracks and try and look for transitions where the keys are the same or compatible, because they can sound lovely. And the reason this is so good is that they can sound lovely even though the tempo might move a lot, the BPM might move a lot, and even though the genre might move a lot. So think about key. Think about the energy level in the tracks and think about oscillating the energy slowly up and down over, say, every 15 or 20 minutes, just to give a little bit of darkness and light, a little bit of flow to your set. And so this can be used in place of beat mixing and in place of actual technical mixing. Just try and get the energy up and down. And also think about the genre insofar as if you are mixing big BPM changes, but you've got things that actually sound quite similar. So you could have a track with a vocalist and a guitar player and some live drums that's fast. And you could have another one with the same things that's slow. So that could be a good time to change the tempo quite drastically. Especially if, and this is when it gets interesting, the energy level between the tracks, in other words, how much they engage people, and the musical key happen to be similar, right? You see what I'm getting at here? If you look at all these 3 things, or 4 things, the key, the genre, the tempo, and the energy level of the tracks, and you just change one of them quite a lot, but keep 2 or 3 of them the same, you might find that you're creating a real flow in the music, and you'll know this because people will come up to you and say, hey, the mixing's really good, I'm loving the way you're doing this, and you know you haven't done a mix for the last half hour, right? So I think that is, if you are a technical DJ and you don't want to just fade songs out, that could be a good way to keep it interesting for you while respecting the format, which is, you know, keeping it down a bit and keeping the variety there, over worrying about big beat mixes and so on. I just want to bring in a few comments that our live audience has given us about the earlier question about the supposed lack of new DJ gear. So if you're a new listener to this podcast, the way this podcast works is that I do have a live audience here when we record it, comprised of our students who get to feedback on these questions. So ATGR says, what you're experiencing here is almost definitely the lag induced by the pandemic, when we were talking about not much DJ gear coming out recently. And so that's something that I think is also true. It's also something that we can see whether that changes in the next year or 2, can't we? I mean, none of us are too worried about it. You know, we've got enough DJ gear, but we all also quite like the new gear, don't we? So thank you for that. So a lot of you are talking about this idea of playing DJ sets that are for people who are in a more relaxed situation and not a nightclub. And a lot of you are saying, look, I do like the technical stuff. Joe makes that point. And I think the thing is to find the technical things that work for the audience that you're playing for. Just like Chase says, should I give the crowd what they want and avoid the quick mixing? So yes, avoid the quick mixing, and you've identified it's not what the crowd want. But there are ways of being technical which don't allow, which don't need that kind of mixing, right? So Ray says, I find counting the beats is more difficult than the beat mixing. I'm starting to learn beat matching, but the counting is still challenging to me. It's a bit like riding a bike, all of this stuff, Ray. So you stick with it, my friend. I'm going to move on to another question now. This one is from John, who is actually asking about quite an exciting thing that we announced on the Digital DJ Tips channels, on our school channels Last week, I was chatting to our friend and tutor, the one and only DJ Jazzy Jeff. And Jazzy Jeff had a lot to say. He's just done the 50 Years of Hip Hop tour last year with all the greats of the hip hop scene. Also, he's about to go on tour with Paula Abdul and New Kids on the Block as their tour DJ, playing stadiums. So he's a busy man, Jeff. However, Jeff and the Digital DJ Tips team have been chatting for a while now about making another course. Jeff has got his How to DJ Right course with Digital DJ Tips, which is a fantastic, basically a look into the world of DJ Jazzy Jeff and how he does it, how he plays. But we're going to make a second course, and the second course is going to be Jazzy Jeff's Scratch course, which is awesome because what we didn't have time to do in the DJing course, because there's so much about the way Jeff DJs that's nothing to do with scratching. Jeff calls scratching he calls it the spice. So he says that, DJing's the food, DJing is the dish, scratching is the spice that you add to the dish. So we're going to do the spice course. But the question from John says, how will the upcoming DJ Jazzy Jeff Scratch course to be released later this year be different from your existing Scratch course? Which is a really good question, John, because we do have a very popular Scratch course already. We were the first DJ school by a long, long way to recognize that people are scratching on DJ controllers. So we released a course called Scratching for Controller DJs, which takes you from beginner all the way up to DMC and Red Bull 3 style scratch techniques. It's a huge course. It's got multiple tutors in it, including 2 DMC winners. And so there's one thing. Our Scratching for Controller DJs course is big. It literally takes you from the very, very beginning through to, if you want and if you've got the time to apply yourself to scratching at professional level, the way it's done today, in a way that would impress the most modern judge of DJ techniques, right? DJ Jazzy Jeff's course is going to be very, very different indeed to that. So what we're going to do with Jeff is an old school course that teaches classic scratch techniques, just half a dozen of them, and it uses all the old tunes to do it. And it's going to be done on old gear, on turntables. It's going to be done on classic DJ equipment. The idea here is that we make a course that people who are fascinated with the early days of hip hop, like the late 80s and the very early 90s, who are fascinated with people like Jeff himself, of course, but Grandmaster Flash and so on, and who want to know, who've always loved those records and who want to be able to do that stuff. That is what Jeff is going to teach. We analyzed the music we want to use, and we realized there were only like half a dozen scratch techniques. By the way, a couple of which Jeff himself invented. It's crazy stuff, people. And if you just combine them properly, you can do so much of the classic stuff. And actually all the modern techniques are built on that stuff. So it's almost like the prequel, right? We're making the Star Wars before the first film. With Jeff, we're going right back to the beginning, to the Genesis times, to make this course. It's a perfect complement to our existing Scratch course. It's going to be as much for fans of hip hop and for fans of Jazzy Jeff as it is for DJs. So we're really excited to make that one, but they will be very, very different, to answer your question there, John. Right, okay, let's move on to the question I had from Paul, which is about moving back into DJing, having not done it for a long time. You'd be amazed how many people in our community are in the kind of position that Paul is in now. And I'm really regretful I haven't had time to look up what Paul mentions here. I'm going to do it afterwards. So Paul says, I used to DJ on a FAL System 50. That is the Google image I didn't have time to search for. Back when I was 18, it was all on vinyl. It was completely pre-CD. I'm now 58, so I make that 40 years ago, 59 actually. And I'm returning to the decks with the aim of specializing in 60s, 70s and 80s music. Very possible, I love the way you thought this through, Paul. Very possibly while wintering in Spain and catering for the expat and British holiday market abroad. What are the things I should prioritize to bring myself up to date, bearing in mind my older audience? I have a new Numark deck and my music is all available electronically via Virtual DJ. I love this question. We recently ran a shout out to our community called 101 Ways to DJ. And we wanted to know what you are doing in your DJing that is not playing in a nightclub, right? That was the call. And you would not believe some of the stories we've got and some of the things we're going to follow up and turn into course stuff and articles and videos. And it's amazing how people DJ nowadays. And Paul, what you've just said is another one. Playing for an expat and holidaymaker market, people your age, people who were going out and listening to the music that you want to play when they were teenagers. But your question, of course, is what's changed? Well, the good news I've got for you, Paul, is actually very little has changed, especially for you, because the audience you're going for have grown up with you, right? So they have changed in the same ways you've changed, right? You've grown up together, so there's nothing to fear there. I think that technically you should definitely treat it as you would have treated a gig back in the vinyl days. So definitely pack a crate, in inverted commas. Don't just turn up with all your music on Virtual DJ and expect to know what to play, because you'll be staring at it thinking, I've actually got quite a few more tunes here than I used to take in my record box, right? So pack a virtual record box. Think hard about what you'll probably play at that event. Take about twice the amount of music that you'll actually play is a good rule of thumb. And try and play from that crate rather than play from your whole collection. I mean, the good news is you've got your whole collection there anyway. Best of both worlds, right? But that's a good tip there that I've taught anyone converting from analog formats to digital that serve them well. Organize your bigger collection properly. And what I mean here is it can be very tempting when you're getting back into DJing digitally to realize how cheap music is nowadays and throw it all in and not actually organize it. So spend a lot of time making sure you've got the genres how you like them, and you've got all your artwork if you're someone that is visual and you like to see the artwork for your tracks. Maybe getting the old artwork that you remember from the tracks back in the day, right? And making sure they've got the right artwork attached. And all that stuff that makes it easy for you to look through that collection and quickly sort it and kind of bring it to life. Make it feel like you own it in the way you used to own a record collection as well. When it comes to mixing and blending your songs, look, you know how you used to do it. But the good news for you here is that there are techniques nowadays which absolutely work well with the kind of music you want to play that you could never do on vinyl. And so I'm talking about echo outs, I'm talking about reverb outs, I'm talking about just dropping the track on the one beat to keep the counting and timing going, which was harder to do properly on vinyl. Now, the good news is that in our book, Rock the Dance Floor, there are videos that I've made explaining all these techniques and showing you how to do them. So I recommend you take a look at those. Click through on the links from the book and have a look at the basic techniques and maybe just learn 2 or 3 of those so you can bring your mixing a bit up to date. What has changed in mixing, even when you're playing older music and so on, is that DJs don't tend to just slowly fade the song out, mumble something into the microphone and start a new song. Nowadays it's a little bit tighter, right? And that's just how it's developed, and it's a good way that it's developed. So a couple of those and you will be good to go. I'm going to move on to a question now from Ryan, who's got a house party gig coming up. And Ryan says, I've gradually been building my music collection for a while now, especially over the last few years. The house party gig, though, looks to be focused on some genres that my local library, my owned music, doesn't have a lot of. I've used streaming services such as Tidal in combination with my own music for this in the past, and I've absolutely smashed it, so well done. And you thank us there for the tuition, so thank you for that, Ryan. But your question then is, would you recommend to use music streaming services? So again, we're talking about plugging in something like Tidal to your DJ software for music, mainly for these sorts of gigs, at least initially until my music collection has got more of these types of tunes. And so is that something that's allowed, and is that something that's advisable? So look, it's really easy. It sounds like these are gigs that you care about, but they're non-critical, right? If for some reason the music streaming services let you down, you could quickly figure it out and just play from your local collection if you really have to. And for that kind of gig, you know what, Ryan, I think you're fine here. Your music, this is the rule really, your music is good for keepers. Your music is good for tracks that you're going to be keeping, because any track that you're going to be keeping forever is something that you might as well own. That makes sense, because you're not relying on streaming services for that kind of thing. But absolutely, if you've got music, so a good example is, let's say you're a house DJ and you want to play music that is for a kiddies party, right? So you're getting Baby Shark and all that stuff. You don't need that in your collection. You're probably only going to play it once. And this rule also goes if you just want to explore a genre you're not used to. So you know what? I really want to do a deep house set, but I don't know anything about it. Well, do a deep house set with the Beatport deep house chart, right? So that it works with that as well. The rule is keep the music that you love and buy it. Everything else, if it's not critical, if it's not going to let you down because you're playing in front of a festival crowd or someone's wedding, then there's no need to go and buy it. I think you're absolutely right there, Ryan. A lot of DJs rely on streaming services all the time nowadays. That's just the way it is. But it's not something that I would worry about too much for the kind of gigs where if for whatever reason the tracks won't load, you're going to be all right. You're going to get by, and it's not going to happen really. It's very unlikely to happen, is it? Right, the next question that came in from another student on a slightly different topic is about gear. This is about an age-old one, about what gear to expect when you go and play in a proper venue. It's from Bohan, and Bohan says, I'm a fully capable DJ in terms of song selections and transitions. Great, so you've got the mixing part down. I DJ'd out a fair amount in my vinyl days, where all one needed to bring was their records and maybe needles. Yes, wise man, bring your needles. But how do folks prepare to spin in clubs and other public venues when what each venue will have in terms of controllers may vary? In other words, what about the gear? The gear is more complicated than ever nowadays. So Bohan goes on to say, I've been spending all my time so far learning Serato, but what I might be facing when I try and spin in a venue might be pro-level CDJs. How do I deal with that? Do I just turn up with a flash drive that I formatted with my music and hope for the best? So let's answer this question. Well, the good news is, in a way, the only thing you're going to find in pro venues is Pioneer DJ, CDJ gear. It's very unlikely you're going to find Tractor or a Serato setup or all that kind of thing. And I guess another piece of good news is if you are used to using Serato or Tractor or whatever, a lot of the time, they've got modern enough gear, modern enough CDJs that are set up well enough that you can actually just plug in and play directly from your collection. So that's the first thing. But the second piece of good news is that if you ask, it's very likely you can bring your own gear, because one thing that's changed in DJ booths over the years, certainly in a lot of areas, is that yes, they have got a pro CDJ setup, right? But at the same time, they will happily take it out the way and put your gear down if that's what you're comfortable playing. And a lot of venues won't even set it up unless you ask for it to be set up, because they know that DJs like to bring their own gear. So don't assume you're going to be forced to use that gear. That's something that has changed. Now, you may want to use that gear. You may think this is my chance, right, to do it. In that case, then get the Pioneer DJ software, which is Recordbox. It's free. It has an export mode, which lets you prepare your music and put it onto a USB drive. So get that. Once you've got that, turn up at the venue and say to them nicely, would it be all right to have a practice on your gear? Get there early, talk to them, give them a ring, see if you can go in on a quiet night or a night when it's closed. They may just say yes, but also most cities nowadays have a DJ company, a DJ hire company, a DJ school, some kind of college that's got some CDJs that you can rent by the hour. So it might just cost you $20 to just go and play on them for an hour to get used to them. It's like driving a car. Really, Bohan, it is. It's not something, sorry, Bodan, it's not something that is going to trip you up for too long. Half an hour, someone's showing you where the controls are, you're probably going to be good to go. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but definitely if you want to play on your own gear, ask them. You might well be surprised what they say. So I spent a lot of time practicing in the studio, getting used to Pioneer gear, says Benedict, one of our students live, which led me to a very successful set when I was warming up for Graham Park. Graham Park being a absolute legendary DJ from Manchester in England, where I'm from. Now, I've got a question here from Stephen Wonder. And Stephen says, I'll be upgrading my Android mobile phone soon, and maybe my Windows laptop in a couple of months as well. I'm wondering what you would recommend as an all-rounder, something compatible with most DJ gear. And that's the gist of what you asked there, Stephen. Right, so let's talk about both things, Android and Windows. You do add, and it is relevant for this question, that you use Algorithm's DJ Pro software. So the problem with Android is that it doesn't work so well generally with music apps as iOS. Let's deal with the mobile side of things first. There's lots of reasons for this, but basically programmers can make something that works on iOS and it'll work on all iPhones and all iPads and it will just work. Whereas on Android, there's work to be done over and above that to make sure it works on all the variations of Android that are out there. So they tend to either not bother with Android, or if they do, it tends to lag behind. And that's why I said it's relevant that you use Algorithm's DJ Pro software, because Algorithm makes its software for iOS and Mac, but also for Android and Windows. But the Android and Windows does tend to lag behind iOS and Mac. And so in this instance, my first piece of advice for you would be consider going the iOS route, consider getting an iPhone if you want to seriously use it as a tool in your DJing. You will find it's far better that way in the long run. When it comes to your laptop, it's a little bit different most of the time, because most DJ software, Serato, Recordbox, Traktor, Virtual DJ, doesn't care what laptop you're using. It will work absolutely fine on both Windows and Mac. But unfortunately, Algorithm's DJ Pro is still ahead on the Mac as opposed to Windows. It just is. They always prioritize Mac. They're very close to Apple. So the CEO of Algorithm has been on the stage at a keynote with Apple, with their software being demoed. They just won an Apple Design Award for their Vision Pro software. They're very close to Apple. And I guess with a very small company like that, they're going to prioritize that side of the business naturally. And so I would recommend that you just think hard about either switching software to something which at least works well on your Windows computer and does have an Android element. So for instance, Recordbox has got an Android app for preparation and so on, and works fine on Windows. So that would be one option. Or just at least go to iOS and consider going to Mac as well. In our live comments, Ray is backing me up there saying Macs and iOS are very solid and stable when running DJ software. You know, we get this question a lot. It's one of those things that divides people, certainly the Mac and Windows issue. And honestly, it doesn't make any difference. But the one place, sadly, in your case, that it does, Stephen, is with the software you use, because they just tend to prioritize for Apple software, that particular company. I've got a question from a humble and reticent British person here. So I resonate with you, Chris. And Chris says, I have a question about self-promotion. Maybe you can help. See, it's very British from the off there. I post full DJ sets and homemade bootleg mashups on my YouTube and Mixcloud. And I'm pleased with my work. But maybe due to my middle age or due to my Englishness, I find it excruciatingly embarrassing to ask people to listen to them, to ask people to give me likes, to ask people to send it to their friends, etc. I was brought up to believe that being humble is a virtue. Part of me also naively thinks that the artistry should speak for itself. I shouldn't have to chase an audience, they should find me. Consequently, I have only a handful of followers and a handful of views. I'm not seeking a career, just a bit of recognition for my achievement in my hobby. What is a DJ to do? Thank you, Chris. I sympathize with you, Chris. I was sat with a friend today who was asking me about digital DJ tips and Jeff. So I was on my phone trying to dial up Jazzy Jeff, and I was like trying to find the course and stuff. And I'm like, he's there like that, tapping his fingers together and looking at his watch. And I'm like, sorry, I'm so not used to showing people what I do and showing off about this thing that has taken up a third of my life and all this. So I know what you mean. But I think you're missing a trick here, Chris. So let's deal with both of those things. I'm not going to deal with your middle-agedness or your Englishness, but I am going to deal with I'm going to question what you think, which is that humbleness is a virtue, right? So if you've done something that you think is great, then you are obliged to get it to people who you think might like it, because it's going to make their life better and it's going to make them happy. So there's absolutely no point writing a novel and then putting it under the bed because you're too humble to promote it. It's part of being an artist, is sharing your work. You have to get serious about sharing your work. And I think what you're missing here is a social media element to what you do. You've got the content nailed, right? You're doing two types of content. You're sharing mixes on YouTube and you're sharing tracks you've made, so mixes on Mixcloud and tracks you've made on YouTube, right? But you haven't got a social media presence where you're engaging with people who might like this stuff. So what I recommend is you just bite the bullet, get yourself an Instagram channel and do what we call the thirds method of spending maybe an hour a week pruning that channel, getting that channel to slowly grow with the kind of people who might be into what you do. And it's very simple. You start an Instagram channel under your artist name and you start following people who you like, genuinely like, maybe in your neighborhood, people doing in the scene that you're in, people making the kind of music you like, obviously friends and family who are into what you do. And then you spend a third of your time posting stuff which would be interesting to those people genuinely. A picture of a new piece of gear you've bought, a picture of the screen showing your latest YouTube upload, and you've got your first 50 listens or something. Just anything that you can say, hey, I'm really proud about this, and so on. Look at the people you follow and how they do it, who also release music to get ideas. Just spend a third of your time doing that, right? So if you've got an hour a week, spend 20 minutes doing that. Spend another third of your time reposting or sharing things other people have done that you think are cool, right? This is where your humbleness doesn't need to enter into it, because you spotted a track you love that someone else has made, or you spotted a DJ doing something you like or whatever. Share that, tag them, show them that you're supporting them, right? And then spend the final third of your time, and if it's an hour a week, this is the final 20 minutes, interacting with, following, replying to, going to other people's content and commenting on that, giving back what you expect to get. The stuff you want to see people doing on your channels, do for them. Go and listen to and follow their YouTubes. Go and like their Mixclouds and so on. If you can find it in yourself to do that, now what you're going to have is the stuff you're sharing. So you've got Mixcloud in your case and YouTube. You're going to have your Instagram channel. And I would then do the third thing, which links them all together, which is go to a website called Linktree. Now, Linktree is a place where for free you can get a one page which will be linktr.ee/your name, and you can put there the link to your Mixcloud, the link to your YouTube, and the link to your Instagram, and a contact for you so people can get in touch with you. And share that link. Just share that link with people, because I'll tell you what will happen when you do. If you don't do that, people are going to go and Google you anyway. As soon as you tell them you're a DJ and you make music, as soon as you turn your back, they're going to go and Google you. So tell them that that's where they can find out what you do. Because if you do these things, then what's likely to happen when people Google you is your Linktree will come up, your YouTube, your Facebook, your YouTube, your Mixcloud, your Instagram, people commenting on your about you on their Instagrams and so on. Suddenly you're going to have all these search results about you. And it gets the ball rolling, an organic ball rolling, where you're part of a little scene of people that you're helping to create, but they're helping to create it as well, where it won't feel like you're selling yourself and it won't feel like you're an English person not being humble, being braggy. It will just feel like somewhere you like to go. And I'll let you into a little secret. You might just end up enjoying going into that Instagram channel and doing your bit. You might end up making little Instagram reels of your mix techniques. You might even end up updating an Instagram story every now and then. You might end up making more mixes and updating your YouTube channel with new bootlegs a little bit more often. And then it will all start rolling. So that's my advice, Chris. Good luck with that. I'd love to know how you get on. I'm going to get to our final question today from a student. This one is from Daniel. And Daniel is talking about his very first gig, which is scaring the hell out of him. And he's found a restaurant locally who he's managed to convince to let him DJ. Says they've got a bit of gear, but his question is this: apart from being a regular customer at the restaurant, which by the way is a great start, apart from being a regular customer at the restaurant, I want to know how I can become more lovable as a completely unknown DJ as I try and get established in this venue. Become more lovable. I love it, Daniel. So in other words, you want to go in there and you want to do such a great job that everyone loves you and they ask you back more and more often. So I'll give you 5 very quick tips here. The first tip is just be professional. Just turn up, be easy to work with. That's my second tip, be easy to work with and do a good job. So be professional and be easy to work with. You know, turn up smart, turn up on time. Don't be a hassle for them. Make sure that you prepare and you do a very good job of it. Because the number of DJs that don't do those two things, be a nice person and also be professional, you wouldn't even begin to believe the number who are, they're late, they're drunk, they're arrogant, they're badly dressed, they're pressed, they're pushy. They're just not professionals and they're not particularly nice. Do those two things, you're going to put yourself ahead of a big chunk of the pack already, known or unknown. So the next thing is to act like you know what you're doing. This is something that you can basically get halfway there by preparation. So in other words, check out the venue, check out the gear, know what you're going to do when you get there, know what other DJs that play there maybe do, and be sure of yourself. Do a whole dry run, do a whole 4-hour dry run at home of the whole set, so that when you turn up there, at least you don't look like an absolute amateur. Only you know how little you've done this, right? You don't have to show it to the world. So just taking a deep breath, smiling and acting like everything's cool, even though you might be really nervous inside. Fake it till you make it. I'll tell you what, 15 minutes into your first DJ set there, I can almost guarantee you're going to be loving it. So all those first time nerves, all that nervous energy, just keep it inside. No one else can see it. Act like you've done this before. Fake it a little bit. It's okay. Number 4, and this is a big one. This is, I think, if you ask me, the biggest mistake that DJs make who are not experienced as opposed to DJs who are, is this one. It's the biggest telltale sign. And this is, don't talk music unless people talk music to you. So we love our music, right? That's why we get into this. So we're really excited about getting there and saying, I'm going to play, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a warm up of some deep house. Then I'm going to go into kind of like a more well-known mix of funk and R&B. And then I'm going to bring it up to a, more well-known tunes towards the end. I'm going to bring in a little bit more modern kind of pop house. And then we'll end on some. They don't care. Yes, they are giving you a chance, and yes, they've got a reason. We play pop, or we play hip hop, or we're a rock bar, or whatever. But look, they don't care. They want you to do a good job, and they trust that you're going to do a good job. So don't blind them with the music stuff. They don't, obviously, if they come over to you and say, the manager or the staff, and say, I really like what you're doing, talk to me a bit more about this, I'm really into this myself, and so on. Then of course talk to them about it, but otherwise save it to the drinks afterwards. Don't talk music at work. They've got other things to do. And my final tip, get paid something. You are doing a job. The equipment you're using costs money. The music you're using costs money. The time that you're putting into this costs money, because you could be doing something else with it. Get paid something. Be honest, do it with a smile, but say to the venue owner, so what do you pay acts here? What have you paid other DJs? What do you pay singer-songwriters who come and play a set? And if they say, I don't know, I've never done it before, say, well, my fees are normally $100, but look, we've never done this before. You don't know whether I can do this. I'll do it for $1 tonight, but if you want me to come back, then it's $100. And that's what it is. Sound all right with you? And then you've given them A, what they're going to pay next time, and B, no risk about this time. But at the end of your set, you're going to go and find that person and say, how was it? Can I have my $1, please? Smiling, jokingly. But what you've done is two things. One, you've got used to approaching them and asking for your money. And two, they know what it's going to cost them next time. You've put yourself in a really strong position. Always get paid something. No professional, by definition, doesn't, right? Well, that's where we're going to leave it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to our amazing student community for all those questions. If you fancy getting a question of your own on one of these shows, then I can guarantee it. All you have to do is become a Digital DJ Tips student. Head over to the digitaldjtips.com website, take a look at our wide range of DJ courses, get yourself signed up, and we'll get you into the student group. And every question that is asked ahead of time for all of these podcasts does get a live answer. So whether or not we see you there, please do head to your podcast platform, give us a 5-star review if you've enjoyed this. Meanwhile, from me here in the studio, get good, get out there, make the moments, and I'll see you for another edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast very soon.